Hello everyone, my name is Enokson Tumine and I'm one of the members of this group. My number is 18 MBA Kampala Weekend 0014. Together with Elizabeth Mbabazi, Simon Peter Dale, Victor Mandira Egesa, of Sharon Piotrin, we will be making our presentation on incentivizing unsolicited proposals for PPPs. So our question is incentivizing USPs is key to attracting and scaling up uptake of PPPs in developing countries. So review literature required from the following sources, among others to provide a brief to the PPP unit for the development of guidelines for handling of unsolicited proposals. So as the literature that we are supposed to follow to review the World Bank, the Swedish approach, the Asian Development Bank, Australia, Latin American countries, this includes Chile, Argentina, and Brazil, South Africa, the MENA countries, that is Middle East and North Africa. Our table of contents include introduction, motivation for unsolicited proposals, procedures for managing unsolicited proposals, challenges of USPs, incentives for USPs, and USP country experiences, summary of the country review and unsolicited proposals in Uganda, our recommendations, and then the conclusion. So we start by defining what are the PPPs. The Knowledge Lab defines PPPs as a long-term contract between a private party and a government agency for providing a public asset or service in which the private party bears significant risk and management responsibility, and remuneration is linked to performance. Unsolicited proposals, as we refer them to as USPs, is a proposal made by a private party to undertake a public-private partnership. In this case, what we call PPP project. So submitted at the initiative of the private firm rather than in response to a request from the government. So USPs are an exception to the typical of government-initiated approach and allow a private company to initiate the process. A private sector entity, in this case as we call it a USP proponent, reaches out to the government with a project proposal to develop an infrastructure project. So the motivations for unsolicited proposals. In those countries where the government considers unsolicited proposals, the motivation comes from the following: inadequate financial and or human capacity to identify, prioritize, and prepare and procure projects. Another one is the desire to avoid lengthy competitive processes in order to implement projects more faster or quickly. Government inadequacy of resources for planning and funding necessary infrastructure development, and the opportunity to tap into the private sector's innovation knowledge to identify value for money project solutions. The absence of proper and comprehensive policy framework for PPPs, because there is no comprehensive policy guideline for unsolicited proposals, are often used to implement 3Ps projects and then deliberate engagement in corrupt practices. So what are the challenges that are related to unsolicited proposals? So most PPPs require the government fiscal support. The government typically accepts risks and the associated contingent liabilities, even if the direct subsidies are not needed. Unsolicited proposals do not originate as part of the government planning process, and in some cases, by definition, are not part of sector plans. This raises the question of whether the services proposed is sufficiently integrated with other sector plans for demand and benefits to be robust to changing circumstances and priorities. Unsolicited proposals may divert government attention from the planned approach to infrastructure as a whole. In a government planning process, public agencies identify the projects that respond directly to infrastructure plans and previously identified societal and economic needs. The primary motivation of the private entity submitting a project idea is, however, to further its own interests, which may not be aligned with those of the government or society. As we can see, the challenges are continued, and we are talking about the negotiating with the project proponents based on the unsolicited proposals in the absence of a transparent or competitive procurement process. Can create problems. It includes results in poor value for money from PPP project, and given lack of competitive tension, provide opportunities for corruption. Unsolicited proposals are beginning to represent a significant share of overall projects in many countries, and these proposals can create negative public perceptions also. Unsolicited proposals increase the burden of governments and corresponding perceptions of corruption, which leads to arguments to prohibit them altogether. So,
my name is Hope Sharon Piotrin. I am a group member of this noble cause. My registration number is 18 MBA weekend /0057. And I'll be taking you through the unsolicited proposal procedure. We start with the timelines outlined there. We start with the proposal initiation. In this case, we identify the project and then develop the preliminary proposal to the government. And if you can see clearly, we have differentiated the roles in terms of the private sector and the public sector. So where you see blue, that's the private sector role, and where you see purple, that is the public sector role. So the proposal initiation, which involves identifying the project and developing preliminary proposal to government. This is you coming up with the idea of actually presenting your unsolicited proposal. Then we move to the assessment and approval. In this case, we have the line ministry assesses the proposal. You can send it probably to maybe the 3P unit, or you can send it to the Ministry of Works, like maybe to UNRWA. And in this case, they will be assessing your proposal. Then they'll review it in terms of, in respect to the USP framework that your country holds at that particular time. That is in terms of fees and risk allocations. Then the third step is the project development. This is thrown back to the private sector role. Then you have a detailed feasibility studies. You submit your detailed proposal, including the project contract structure and the draft contracts. And from this process now, you hand over the proposal to the public sector, which is handled still by the line ministries. They assess and approve a project to be procured as a PPP, and then they institute competitive procurement, including exercising rewards for initial proponents. And I believe this is where the incentives actually come in. And then there is project implementation. So here they select, this is selection of the contractor through the PPP procurement, and then project implementation. Now, the private party, this is the USP proponent, goes ahead and starts doing their work while government is monitoring. So that is the procedure for you. As you know that our question is on incentives. How does the government actually come and incentivize to enable more USP projects to be submitted to them? So the first incentive we have is a developer's fee. Here is reimbursing the original proponent for the project development cost. This the advantage about the developer's fee is that it motivates the private parties to keep submitting more proposals, because you never know, sometimes your chance is there for your proposal to go through. But still, if it doesn't go through, then at least you have a compensation that is given to you. Then we have the Swiss Challenge. The Swiss Challenge, also known as a right to match, the most dreaded of these incentives. It's an open tender process conducted in which the USP proponent has the right to match the winning bid in order to win the contract. If unsuccessful, the original proponent has the option to match the winning bid and win the contract. So in meaning that even if another proponent brought the proposal to government and they won, but when someone who is more interested in it comes by, they can be in position to win the project. For example, in Italy, in the Philippines and Colombia, this is very much practiced. However, as you can note, is that it's highly discouraged because it gives competing bidders little incentive to spend resources developing a bid when knowing it can be matched by USP proponent. Another one, you have the bonus system. This is an open tender process is conducted In the evaluation of the bids, the USP proponent receives bonus points, generally between 5 to 10, but these are also country specific. So each country has their own points that they award to the proponents, giving him an advantage over other bidders. This bonus can take many forms, but mostly it is an additional theoretical value applied to the regional proponent's technical or financial offer for bidding purposes only. We also have the automatic shortlisting, access to the best and final offer. This is BAFO, and I believe BAFO is used in many countries as well. This process, BAFO process, and an automatic shortlisting, or automatic shortlisting as they call it. This option applies to a multi-stage tender procedure. The USP proponent does not have to pass the preliminary stages of the procurement procedure, but is automatically invited to the last stage, in which the remaining bidders submit their best and final offer. So if you present your USP project, you don't need to go through the whole shortlisting, the whole bidding process and all that, but you come and compete at the final point in time. And then lastly, we have the regular procurement. I believe we know the regular procurement is where you go through the step-by-step process. An open tender process is conducted in which the USP proponent competes on equal terms with other bidders. However, this is one of the incentives, but it could also be a discouraging incentive because you go through the whole process flow. Because the mere fact that you're bringing a USP is because you feel you have a better advantage than other bidders. So the regular procurement process is an open tender process conducted. So you also have to come and compete on equal grounds and on equal terms with your colleagues.
My name is Dale Simon Peter. Together with my colleagues, a group of 5, we are discussing unsolicited proposals for PPPs. My registration number is 18/MBA/killer/weekend/005. I'll be reviewing literature for specific countries in the context of the question, and I'll be starting with the MENA countries, that is Middle East and North Africa countries. The MENA region is made up of 19 countries. This is Morocco, Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Qatar, Kuwait, Afghanistan, Tunisia, Oman, Libya, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the others. I'll start with Morocco. In this country, Morocco, USPs are included and explicitly allowed in their legal framework. This is done through a competitive PPP procurement, meaning that the country provides for the framework. In their framework, they provide for USPs. The procurement procedure also grants a minimum period of time for additional proponents to bid, meaning that when a proponent has provided a USP, the other bidders are given a chance to also come in so that you really get value for money. Then through the framework, it's guided by an article, Article 9, subsection 6 of the PP law, and 36 and 41 of the PP decree. The unsolicited offerer, who is the initial offer of the USP, may receive an arbitrary lump sum of compensation when the bid is unsuccessful as an incentive. This means that in case the proponent brought up a USP and is not successful, the regulator is in position to reward them with an incentive, which is a lump sum. For Jordan, the next country is Jordan. In their regulatory framework, they also allow, they provide for USPs. And this is under Article 11 of the PP law that provides that any private party can propose directly the idea to the idea of a partnership project to any of the governmental authorities under certain conditions. So it means a proponent can directly propose a USP to any government authorities for consideration. So they initiate a competitive PPP procurement procedure through a bidding process in accordance with the general rule in the regulatory framework. So after this is approved and the project is okay, normally this goes through the procurement process as provided in the framework of Jordan. So the incentives in the Article 35 subsection C of their PPP framework include bid bonus and developers fee. So these are reimbursements for the initiator of the idea. Normally, they use the bonus system as an incentive and also developers fee. That is, they give back a reimbursement of the cost of the project. That's what they mean by the developers fee. And the bid bonus, normally these are points in the bidding process, which are normally awarded to the person who has initiated the idea in order to create fairness and also competitiveness in the process. Then we are also going to discover the next country is Qatar, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. These are lumped up and also discussed in the lump sum because they are quite unique. They do not provide for unsolicited proposals in their PP framework. Meaning, when you take in your USP, their framework does not provide for it. So you find that they will not be considered, in other words. The next country is South Africa. This has a framework and a framework that provides for USPs under the National Treasury Practice, note number 11 of 2008-2009. And it also relates to unsolicited proposals. Then in the same law, it provides that if the unsolicited proposal is a PPP, the accounting officer or accounting authority must comply with the requirements of the Treasury regulation and practice note that is relevant. The same National Treasury practice note provides that institutions are not obliged to consider unsolicited proposals, but may consider them under certain circumstances, such as if a comprehensive and relevant project feasibility study has been established, has established a clear business case, and also that the product or service involves an innovative design, or if the product or service involves an innovative approach to project development and management, and also if the product or service presents a new and cost-effective method of service delivery. So in South Africa, incentive mechanisms used are best and final offer, that is BAFO, and direct negotiation. BAFO is normally, they allow you to British country experience. The regulatory framework in Sweden does not allow USPs, but for PPPs it has a framework that regulates. So basically it handles PPPs but not USPs. So the next country is Australia. The USPs are explicitly regulated and explicitly allowed by the legal framework. They have the New South Wales Unsolicited Proposal Guide, which outlines the guiding principles, roles, and responsibilities of the government and the process for receipt and consolidation of unsolicited proposals. They have vetting procedures, or pre-feasibility analysis is done before fully assessing the USP. Proposals are assessed based on uniqueness, value for money, whole of government impact, return on investment, capability and capacity of the proponent to deliver the proposal, affordability, and appropriate risk allocated. This is all done through a competitive PPP procurement procedure and grants a minimum period of time for other prospective bidders to prepare their proposals. They do not have any incentive mechanism to reward and compensate the presentation of USPs.
My name is Wandera Victor Egesa, and my registration number is 18 MBA Weekend Kampala 0135. Continuing with the country experiences, in this case, the Latin America. Latin America itself constitutes of countries including Peru, Venezuela, Chile, Guatemala, Ecuador, among others. In this particular case, we will take Chile for our case study. Article 4.2 of the concessions regulations caters for the USPs or the unsolicited proposals in Chile. However, this takes procedures in two different stages. The first stage being presentation of the proposal or of the unsolicited proposal by the applicant to the line ministry, which in most cases is the Ministry of Planning and Works, to decide whether the particular USP is of public interest. The next stage requires the same applicant to submit the survey required by the ministry to evaluate the private idea. The same Article 4 of the concession regulation requires the Ministry of Public Works to evaluate the pre-feasibility of the project. Chile as a country provides two kinds of incentives in this case. The first one being the developer's fee for the developer, and then the other being the bid bonus. In the case of the Costa Rican government, there are no particular or specific regulations for the USPs or the unsolicited proposals. However, they have allowed for concessions explicitly in their legal framework. It should be noted that the article of the concession law allow and briefly regulate the USPs. The USPs are further regulated in detail by the Executive Decree 31836. For the case of Brazil, USPs are explicitly allowed in the legal framework, and these do happen in practice. Both the private persons and legal entities are accepted to submit their proposals to the public authorities. They require USPs to be among the existing government priorities, and they initiate a competitive PPP procurement procedure when evaluating these particular USPs within a timeline of 45 days for submission. The incentives that the Brazilian government provides in this case include the developers' fees, as stipulated in Article 21 of the concession law.
Yeah, well, Enochson here again. I'm back to take us through the World Bank Literature Review. So the World Bank report on the framework for unsolicited proposals discusses the need for clear framework on unsolicited proposals. Governments must first decide whether to allow USPs as part of their PPP program. This decision should be based on an informed understanding of the advantages and disadvantages of the USPs. So a government's decision on USPs need to be permanent. However, the government's position should be clear and well publicized to ensure the following. Private entities only expend resources when they know the government will consider their proposals. Another one is the public agencies know whether to accept such proposals and how to respond to them. The effectiveness of USP policy will be influenced by the wider institutional and political environment for both privately and publicly initiated PPPs. Governments must ensure that the development of the USP policy is accompanied by the following: the effective PPP policies and regulations that follow international best practices, and effective institutional organization governing both publicly and privately initiated PPPs, the development of institutional and human capacity for the public, official, and agency tasked with PPP development and implementation. The success of the USP policy will be in part determined by the effectiveness of the PPP legal and policy framework, as unsolicited solicited proposal policy is not expected to replace the PPP policies or procurement laws, but rather to complement them in areas that specifically to private initiated PPPs. So adopting unsolicited proposal policy should be accompanied by assessment of the effectiveness of the institutional structure and handles both publicly and private initiated PPP projects. The effectiveness of the unsolicited proposal policy will also depend on the capabilities and experiences of the public officials responsible for handling the unsolicited proposals. Now we go to Asian Development Bank. This is the development bank. It's a regional development bank that was established in December 1966, and it has 68 member countries as of now. So the PPPs in developing Asia have evolved considerably in recent years, and governments are no longer the sole provider of essential public assets and services. And unsolicited projects are widely used in emerging economies, with the Republic of Korea having one of the world's highest ratios for solicited to unsolicited projects, as shown in the table below. So the unsolicited proposal for the in 4 emerging economies, and we have Chile, Republic of Korea, South Africa, and Taipei, China, and these are the ratios as you can see. So we move on. So flexible and inventive project approaches are a positive side to unsolicited project proposals, and they impose less of a financial burden on the ministries. So the next table shows the acceptance ratios for unsolicited PPP projects from 2009 to 2016 value for money tests, and competitive bidding processes are applied to unsolicited project proposals, and this has resulted in getting value for money from unsolicited project proposals. In this way, the government tries to secure efficiency and fiscal soundness in PPPs from unsolicited projects. The lessons for developing Asia from the Republic of Korea's experiences dealing with the unsolicited project proposals, in that countries need to build this capacity in their agencies working on PPPs. So as you can see, the acceptance ratios of unsolicited PPPs in the Republic of Korea from 2009 to 2016, and these are the ratios as shown here. So we can move on, and this is the summary literature reviews. So the many countries have legally regulated frameworks for unsolicited proposals, though some other countries do not have the regulatory frameworks and do not consider USPs for PPP projects. Then unsolicited proposal approved by the government in line with the public goods and services needs, they have to be of public interest. Most of them follow a competitive procurement procedure for PPPs. Incentives are necessary to encourage more unsolicited proposals from the private parties. For example, developers fees, bid bonus, Swiss challenge, for full competition. And main projects are in transport, social infrastructure, energy, among others. Thank you very much.
USPs are accepted by the contracting authority in Uganda. We'd like to go back home where we are. And USP requirements for Uganda, they indicate proposed objectives, significance, and how it must assist the contracting authority achieve its objectives, descriptions of the proposed project in technical details, cost-benefit analysis of the proposed project, explanation as to why the application merits special treatment under the competitive bid process. There are also considerations in Uganda. The proposed project should satisfy the National Development Plan objectives, provision for feasibility study of the proposed project, so you need to do the feasibility first before you actually consider it. Infrastructural service of the project involves an innovative design or involves innovative approach. It has to be unique. And then the management or presents a new and cost-effective method of service delivery for it to be considered. And then upon acceptance of the USP by the contracting authority, in this case government, it will be evaluated and assessed based on uniqueness, innovativeness, and researched on meritorious methods, concepts, or approaches demonstrated in the USP. Overall, scientific, technical, or socioeconomic merit of the unsolicited project, potential contribution of the USP to the USP project to the strategic objective of the contracting authority. An assessment whether the proposed cost of the project is realistic, affordable, and justified. Accepting USPs are subjective to competitive bidding process, just like the other countries we've seen, and open to participation by all interested bidders. Compensation methods are indicated in the tender documents during the bidding process. So for Uganda, it is not it's not specific. It is according to presentation of the different USPs. So as our group, these are recommendations that we
Recommendations to the Public-Private Partnership Unit in Uganda. It is critical to remember that incentives are not a panacea and they must be placed in the context of a clear, well-structured policy framework to manage unsolicited proposals. The unsolicited proposal procedure should be well clarified to all interested proponents. 1. We recommend that the Public-Private Partnership Unit creates a healthy competition dependent on a good public-private partnership procurement practice of Uganda, such as a transparency and public disclosure policy to avoid perceptions of corruption and provide legitimacy to the process. Secondly, the Public-Private Partnership Unit should introduce minimum submission requirements, such as technical and financial capabilities of the unsolicited proposal proponent or pre-feasibility studies to filter out non-serious and low-quality proposals. Thirdly, we also recommend that the Public-Private Partnership Unit allows sufficient time for competing bidders to develop their proposals and thus create market interest. More so, a good comprehensive policy will protect the public interest, ensuring fairness, competitiveness throughout the process. Hence, it is up to the government to perform this balancing act and assess which incentive mechanism would be the best fit for its market and the unsolicited proposal policy. Given the challenges associated with unsolicited proposals, the government has the right to be very demanding. Ultimately, publicly originated, well-structured projects remain the best way to attract competition and ensure value for money. For those public authorities that are willing to consider unsolicited proposals, they need to put themselves in a good position to be able to attract serious private sector bidders. Committing to competitively tendering its projects within a transparent and clear policy framework with balanced incentives mechanisms in an efficient way to do so. Conclusively, our conclusion is clear processes for handling unsolicited proposals are important for transparency, helping build confidence among all stakeholders that projects developed from unsolicited proposals deliver value for money. Clear processes can also help incentivize private developers to invest resources in developing good quality project proposals and encourage potential competitors to engage in the bidding process.
In our research, we engaged quite a number of different research works. So our references are indicated on the two slides below. And basically, we used a lot of information from the World Bank, the Private Sector Infrastructure Advisor Facility, and the Private Partnership Legal Resource Center. Thank you.